So, welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I started an eco conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, at Oxford Clay, I don't just make pottery, I also make resources such as books and courses and information for other potters who want to be more eco-conscious in their pottery practice but maybe don't know where to start or can't find out the information they need. So that's what this podcast is all about. It's about sharing everything I've learned along my eco-conscious pottery journey with you, and I can't wait to get started. So let's go. Hello, welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Tomlinson, and right, so today's episode, I was originally going to call it Supporting Your Evolution as a Potter. And I was like, evolution? Like, where are we actually trying to get to? We're not trying to get anywhere. We're just trying to enjoy pottery. We're trying to have like an embodied experience of experiencing joy when we make pottery. For me, that is kind of like where we're trying to get to. So there is no real like kind of evolution. I suppose, you practice, you get an evolution of some sorts in your kind of technical abilities as a potter. But yeah, so I was like, no, let's not call it that. Let's call it supporting your joy as a potter. So, I just want to tell you about some things which I found in my own pottery practice that have really supported me experiencing like more joy in my pottery, because that for me is like kind of like the end goal of pottery, or like, like the point of pottery is just like to enjoy it, basically. So the first thing to say is that what I've been trying to do in my own pottery practice is to reframe any kind of like inverted commas failure as like learning. So oh yeah, pottery is always going wrong, isn't it? Like all the time. Like there's always like it's always like on your favorite thing as well, where you've been like working on it for ages, and then oh no, you've noticed like a crack in the base, and like yeah, you've been working on it for like 6 weeks, and now there's a crack in it because it's dried too fast or dried too slowly, or you've added a bit on and that's cracked off, or there's always something kind of like yeah, pottery is always like just doing its thing, and sometimes it's not what we want it to be doing. So yeah, so every time I have something like that where I'm just like, it feels like I've put a lot of effort into something and then it's like not gone right in inverted commas, or it's like not had like a sort of expected result that I like wanted. My expectations were that it was going to do something, or like I just yeah, or it's broken or cracked or something. I'm trying to like yeah, I'm reframing that as like this is an opportunity for like learning, learning more about like that sort of particular clay type and how fast it likes to dry, or how good my technique is, maybe like joining stuff on. Could I when I'm joining clay together, or like I'm joining a sprig design onto my pot, could I maybe use a bit of vinegar to like help that stick, or maybe I need a bit more slip next time, or a bit more scoring, so it's like when I attach the things, so it's always like yeah, what can I learn? What have I learned? I like it's never like a wasted thing. It's always like I've learned something out of it. Like let me give you let me give you a good example of this. Okay, so I slip cast some mugs the other day. This is literally just a few days ago, and so I slip cast them, and when the mugs like had come out the mold, I was like, they're a bit thin, and I thought, do you know what's going to happen? They're going to warp in the kiln. I can just see this now down the line, with the glaze firing. I was like, they're going to be too thin. They're going to warp. And also, I was kind of worried about like someone using a very, very thin mug just in case, like, I don't know, yeah, especially if it's got like a hot liquid in or something. I was like, I don't feel good about this. So what I thought was like, okay, why don't I try and like add some extra slip, like slip cast them kind of again, but this time like outside the mold, because I already take them out of the mold, and they were like they'd shrunk a little bit, and so I was like, well, I can't put them back in the mold and like recast them, add more clay. I'm gonna have to do it when they're out the mold. So I thought, okay, I wonder like how that's gonna go, and I'd already actually put a design on them. So I'd spent a lot of time already, like cleaning them all up, getting rid of all the kind of lines from the cast from the like, the join from the cast, and I'd put on like, this like design I'd made and stuff, like a dragonfly design, and one had a butterfly on. So I was like, okay, well, let's just maybe try and pour some slip in them and like see if I can make them thicker. Just kind of, they were like kind of leather hard, and I thought, let's just see how it goes. So I put slip in them, and like, yeah, just to say, like that does not work at all. But like it was an experiment. I tried it. Yeah, okay, I wasted 2 mugs. Basically, what happened was they just like absorbed loads of water from the slip. Didn't They got a little bit thicker, but not really. They kind of just then warped because they've got really, really soft. And when I was pouring the slip out, then they kind of like bent out of shape. And so I was like, okay, great. Well, now they're definitely going to warp. And then as they dried, I thought, I'm just going to dry them, see how it goes. As they dried, the new layer of slip all like cracked. So it was like, yeah, the whole thing was like a massive disaster. But and then, yeah, okay, I suppose you could say like I wasted loads of time because I like just, put the design on the mugs and spent ages like, sponging them and stuff like that. But I did learn so much from that. I learned that that is not something you can do to slip casting mugs. You need to slip cast them at the right thickness at the time you're actually slip casting them. So, like another thing learned. But yeah. Um, okay, so yeah, so reframe failure as learning. That's one of the things that can really support your joy as a potter, because you're like, nothing's wasted. It's all just time spent learning. And then another thing I thought was like, don't judge your early work. So this is like, sometimes like you can look back on stuff and you can see how you've changed as a potter, see how your skills have grown. But like it can kind of give you this feeling where you're like, I wish that was better, from the past sort of thing. But what I would say to you is that like that is kind of almost like evidence of growth, evidence of all the things you've learned and all the, growth. Inverted commas, like just in terms of your technical skills, changing and evolving, and there's that evolving word again. But yeah, so like judging your early work is almost like judging kind of like yourself as a learner, and that really does suck the joy out of your pottery practice. You need a not you need a safe, psychologically safe space to try different things. Try a new technique, be a beginner at something. It needs to be safe. You need to create that safe space in your mind to be like a beginner and to watch the progression of your skills over time. So yeah, so I would say like looking back at your early work is like evidence at like how much you've learned. So it's a good thing. Okay, another thing that I've been trying to do recently is just really allow myself to play in my pottery. So I think like like in the past, sometimes like say like I've been learning something and there's like, inverted commas, like a right way of doing it or like a wrong way of doing it that's going to result in, something like the pot not really working or something. And the right way is this, the right way to slip cast a mug is like to do it the right thickness at the time. You can't be like, trying to pour slip into it when it's like already out the mold. That's just not going to work. Okay, yeah, that didn't work. But it's just to kind of like I've been trying to let myself play. So rather than just thinking, no, that's not going to work. It's not, that's not the way of doing something. I just kind of like, okay, well, let's try it. And actually, that trying it process brings me a lot of joy. Like, I love kind of like trying things, experimenting with stuff. Like I've created all these pottery books just out of experimentation. So, all the ones about, glazing with different plants and, creating different colors with like eco conscious colorants, and, all the kind of books about like, yeah, the books I've done about sort of, trying different like ways to make pottery more eco-consciously. All of those have been born out of like experiments and trying stuff and like playing with stuff and like playing with different plants and like and collecting leaves and burning leaves and then playing with the glazes and just playing with different colors and different ingredients. And it's like that is the kind of thing for me that brings me like so much joy in pottery. It's just really allowing myself to just like really think like to play. And then what happens when I'm playing in pottery is that like it helps my creativity in general, and I get more ideas, and then I'll settle on an idea and then I can write about it and research about it. And but it's that playing thing which really is really important for like helping you support your joy as a potter. um, okay, so the next thing is kind of really related to play, is just like allowing yourself to follow your curiosity in pottery, because like that can quite often tell you where you're going to get the most joy out of like pottery, like doing pottery. So say like there's a technique you learn, someone teaches you something and you're like, I don't really think don't really want to do that. It's so important to listen to that intuition about like what you think you're going to like. And quite often, like what you're going to enjoy, quite often, like your curiosity tells you what you're going to really enjoy. So by following your curiosity about like maybe making glazes from plant ashes, or, making different colors, or, creating your own metal oxides from like, copper wire, like all those things, I followed my curiosity, and that has just brought me so much joy in my pottery. And it's really kind of, in a way, like evolved what the way I'm making pottery. So it's like I've learned loads of stuff. I've learned like new skills and new techniques, and yeah, and it's brought me so much joy just like experimenting with different stuff and like thinking, oh, I wonder what that would do if I did that. But it's like, yeah, just allowing yourself to follow your curiosity is like can just bring you so much joy as a potter. Um, Okay, so yeah, two more things to say to you on this topic. The first of the last two things is just like allow yourself to do things like your way. So like give yourself permission to like make pottery in your own way. So give you an example of this. Like when I was at pottery evening classes, I was learning how to make pots on the wheel, and there was this the way I was taught was this, oh, there's this one technique, this is how to hold your hands, and I'm actually left-handed, so like when I was on the pottery wheel, like, sometimes like the teacher would be like, oh, okay, this is how you hold your hands, in this position and stuff like that. And sometimes like I could feel in my body that my hands didn't want to make like pots on the wheel like that. It just didn't quite feel good. And then I would start like kind of doing it my way and stuff. And then the teacher would be like, okay, you can do it that way, but it means that you'll only be able to make like quite small things, because like, say for example, like you don't have the right kind of hand pose kind of thing when you're making the pot. And so, you'll only be able to like, like the strength you've got in that kind of formation of your hands will, result in you being able to only make certain things. But it just didn't feel right for me to make it like in any other way. So yeah, what I thought is at the time I was like, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't like, like the right inverted commas way of doing stuff, but it feels good to me. And when something feels good, it brings you so much joy. And I thought, the point of my pottery really is to kind of like feel joy and like, enjoy it. And if my hands are in a position where I just feel like it's not quite the right thing and I can't make the thing because my hands don't feel right, my body's feeling awkward or something, that's going to stop me from actually like, channeling my creative flow and stuff. So yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to give myself permission not to be doing it in the way the teacher says I should be doing it, but that's okay. I'm just going to do it, like the way I want to do it. So that brought me loads of joy, just kind of like giving myself permission to kind of like do it my way. And I think as well to say is like the more kind of time you spend kind of practicing, not like necessarily practicing different ways of doing things, but just practicing, you really do get into like your own kind of creative style, in pottery. It's like because you've kind of built up that like I guess like the muscle memory of being able to make things in a way that you really enjoy. Like you can feel your body is like really enjoying it, making it that way. And then it like helps you to cultivate like your own creative style in pottery. And then like, that just perpetuates more joy because you're like, this is the way I do it. This is the way I like making it. And yeah, it's like a sort of a really good, positive, self-perpetuating cycle. Um, yeah, okay. And then the last thing I wanted to say to you on this episode was really just like that make like sort of supporting joy in pottery. One of the really important things to think is that like your learning journey in pottery isn't linear. So I think quite often, like when I was like, especially at the beginning when I was first learning pottery, it was like, oh, why am I not like, better? Like I'd be going, say like I'm going to evening classes, and like one week I'd be like, oh, I can do this. And then like the next week I'd go and I'd be like, oh, I thought I could do that, but now I seem to not be able to do it anymore. It's like the learning journey in pottery often goes in cycles where like say like you'll suddenly have like a breakthrough or something and know, oh, this thing, I can do this thing now. And then, and then it will like maybe so like yeah, just to think like it could be like as you think it might like it's a straight line as in like okay, right, I learn this and I learn this and I learn this and then I can do it. But actually what tends to happen is it's like it can come in like cycles or a kind of really non-linear journey where suddenly you'll be like, oh, it all comes together and I understand this now. And like, oh, okay, so I understand like glazing and I can do this and this and maybe make my own glaze now or something. It's like so just like like taking those expectations away from yourself that your learning journey in pottery should be linear and it should be inverted commas like progressing all the time, just to kind of give yourself permission, like I said, like to play. Your skills can go like sort of off on a trajectory, or like it can feel like they're going backwards for a bit or something, but it's all happening perfectly. And like it's all like just giving yourself permission to learn in a way that is like happening naturally for you is really important in terms of supporting your joy in pottery. So yeah, it's been so nice talking to you about like supporting your joy in pottery. And like I said, that is like the whole point really of doing pottery, is just like having that like lived experience of joy when you're actually making it. That's what I'm kind of like bringing my pottery practice back to. It's just like, am I enjoying it? Great. It's all good. So yeah. So wishing you very, very happy, joyful pottery making. And thank you so, so much for joining me on this episode. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing you on the next one. And I'll see you soon. Until then, goodbye. Oh, yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you're interested to learn more about eco conscious pottery or making your pottery more eco conscious and sustainable, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website, which is www.oxfordclay.co.uk. I can't wait to see you there.